Decision 2004, Election Lights. Here is Tom Brokaw.
9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and 15 more states from the New York Island to the deserts of Arizona and many states in between, 13 altogether, representing 159 electoral votes, have closed their polls. In Texas, the homeboy wins his own state, the former governor of Texas, George W. Bush. In New York, no surprise, 31 electoral votes for John Kerry. In Kansas, the heartland, a big red state, 6 votes for George Bush. Nebraska, same thing, another big red state, quite literally, 5 votes. North Dakota, more Bush territory, 3 electoral votes. South Dakota, 3 electoral votes. We'll be watching the Thune-Daschle race there later on. In Wyoming, the home of Alan Simpson, 3 electoral votes. And in Rhode Island, back on the East Coast, John Forbes Kerry, who sailed off Rhode Island, he gets the 4 electoral votes there. So here's the map now as it stands, as it was just a moment ago, and as we fill it in. You can see John Kerry, 112 electoral votes, George Bush, 156. But the keys are still down there in the southeast, in Florida, in the industrial Midwest, in Pennsylvania and Ohio. The polls have been closed in both those states for some time. Wisconsin and Michigan have been closed as well in this last hour. We still can't call them too close, too early. There it is. There is the presidency, ladies and gentlemen. Somewhere in those states, the electoral votes that will go to one candidate or the other will determine who occupies 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the most powerful office in the world for the next 4 years. Will it be George W. Bush going back for 4 more years, or will it be Senator John Kerry? Tim?
Tom, you called states. They're all important, but the ones you didn't call were more important. If we can talk in terms of the Electoral College. Pennsylvania, the polls have been closed since 8 o'clock. Al Gore won that state by 5 points 4 years ago. Bill Clinton won it twice by 9 points. The Kerry people need that Pennsylvania in their corner. It's a linchpin. Also, we're waiting to hear from Minnesota and Wisconsin, 2 key states in the Great Lakes there. Kerry must hold those states, because if he can, then his strategy is to win Ohio and win the presidency.
Going into this election, Tim, we said it would be close, and we did not lie.
It is unbelievable. We thought 2000 would be a once-in-a-lifetime story to cover. You're 2 for 2, Brokaw, in the last 2 presidential elections.
Well, we'll see, because in any one of those states, a few hundred votes could mean a big electoral victory as well. We want to remind everyone of that. If it just slides across to one side or the other, and somebody sweeps Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Florida by just a few hundred votes, they get a ton of electoral
300
votes.
electoral votes?
Right.
And it'd be considered a very sizable majority.
All right, let's go to the White House now. NBC's David Gregory. What are they thinking there, David?
Well, no surprise over here, Tom, that the president's working the phones from the residence. He congratulating some winners in Senate races across the country, calling Johnny Isakson down in Georgia to congratulate him on his victory. More importantly to the president, he spoke to his brother, Governor Jeb Bush, in Florida within the past hour, according to a senior advisor here. And the reports are much better, they are claiming. There was a lot of discouraging news coming out of Florida. They thought early on, one advisor tells me they are making a strong comeback. They're pointing to a couple of key points. They believe that there are counties along the I-4 corridor, a lot of independence there where the president is outperforming their own expectations. Some of these counties, Gore counties from 2000. Also in Miami-Dade County specifically, an advisor says that of the absentee ballots coming in, a third of them have been counted, and they believe at this point, they claim, are breaking heavily for the president in a county he's not likely to win. So as they look through the state, they look at the areas where Kerry has to perform exceedingly well, and they find that the president is extremely competitive, more so than they thought. They're also waiting. They don't have a lot of numbers yet from the Panhandle, which is, of course, heavy Republican territories. Won some of those counties there 2-1 back in 2000. That's where they expect a late surge as well. So they're feeling a lot better about Florida at this point. As for Ohio, spoke to an advisor just in the last 15 minutes. He called it a dead heat. Tom?
Well, Ohio is Florida's twin this year. We have Ann Thompson in Ohio. Ann, what do you have for us?
Tom, you know, those long lines that have been the hallmark of this election here in Ohio are the subject of a lawsuit tonight. The Democrats went to a federal judge about 5 o'clock tonight and said, look, people who've stood in these lines, who've been in line for more than 2 hours, ought to be offered paper ballots because there just aren't enough machines to go around. The federal judge granted the temporary restraining order for voting in Franklin and Knox counties. But I spoke to Jeff LaRue of the Franklin County Board of Elections just in the past few minutes who said they are not issuing paper ballots to people who are in line. However, they are offering everybody who was in line at 7:30 when the polls close an opportunity to vote on the touchscreen machines tonight. In Knox County, officials over there tell us they're trying to figure out what to do. People are still in line over in Knox County. The longest line is said to have 250 people. So people in Ohio are getting a chance to vote, but at this hour they are still doing it by machines in those two counties, not by the paper ballots as recommended by the federal judge.
All right, Ann Thompson, I'm going to make an assumption then that the polls have not officially closed in Ohio, and part of the rule that one of the rules that we're going to follow tonight is that we're not going to make any kind of a projection in the state until all the polls have closed.
There are people still voting, Tom. They said at 7:30, that was when the line ended. If you came at 7:31, you don't get a chance to vote. But if you were in line at 7:30, you're going to get an opportunity to vote. The Secretary of State's office has been very definitive about that. And at this point, at this hour, people are still voting in this state.
All right, let's show you the numbers in Ohio. And as we do that, I want to remind you that Ohio is effectively two states, North and South. Cuyahoga County, which is Cleveland and the great metropolitan areas, and then down south, there's a whole cultural differentiation that is much more like Indiana and Kentucky and West Virginia, although Ohio is unique always. We have 5% of the vote counted so far, 5% difference between the two candidates. We're just getting underway in Ohio. All right, let's go to now one of the president's principal advisors, the man who helped him so much 4 years ago, former governor of the great state of Montana, Mark Roscoe, joins us now. As you look at the map tonight, can you hear me, Governor? Are we having audio difficulties again? All right. Well, Tim Russert.
Ohio, Tom? The key has been for the Kerry campaign to emphasize the economy more there than anywhere else in the country. One simple reason. George Bush carried Ohio by 171,000 votes in the year 2000. The state has lost over 200,000 jobs. Kerry goes back to that state day in and day out and kept saying, you see, you are economically depressed because of George Bush's policy. The president came back and said, look, I know things aren't as good as you want them to be, but we're on the way back. Stay with me.
Carl Rove and company believes that cultural issues will help them in the southeast and in the southwest in Ohio. They think that they lost votes last time around because in the closing days of the campaign, it was disclosed that George W. Bush had had a drunk driving arrest, and that kept some cultural conservatives at home, according to Mr. Rove and his operatives. They think they'll get him back this time, and that will make the difference. Tim, we're going to go to Mark Roscoe now, the former Montana governor, who's been so helpful to the president during all this. As you look at the map, Governor Roscoe, tonight, what are the opportunities for the president that are still to be realized that are realistic in your judgment?
Well, I think that Iowa and Wisconsin and New Mexico are obviously very realistic, and we believe that we're very competitive in Michigan and Pennsylvania as well. We put out, over the course of this last weekend, there were 1.2 million people who made 18 million contacts in the various different target states. So we feel very good about the passion and the dedication and the effort with our ground game.
We've been talking here all night long, Governor, about what happens at the end of this evening, whoever wins. We have a deeply divided country based on everything that we're seeing. What would be your recommendation to the president about how he governs in the second term and any changes that you think he should make?
Well, you know, I think these have been incredibly perilous and difficult times for us as a nation. There's been a lot of soul searching. This generation, you've written about the past generation, the last greatest generation of Americans, in very poignant terms. And I think this generation, confronted with the same difficulties, of course, is searching its conscience and its soul. And it's not always easy to lead. It's not always easy to be courageous and to take that step forward. And I think that has been an issue that has been a flashpoint and a matter of great difficulty. The president's spoken to that. I think his efforts, if you take a look at how he's addressed things legislatively, even up until the last couple of weeks, he's been working in a bipartisan way. Everything that's been accomplished in substantial detail has been the result of bipartisanship, and he has sought that at every occasion. My expectation would be that if he's reelected, he will make every genuine effort to once again re-engage in a partnership with Congress and with members from both sides of the aisle to get good things done on behalf of the American people. I think you'll see it reflected in his language and in his actions.
You resisted his overtures to join his administration for the first term. Would you be interested in joining the administration in a second term?
You know, that seems so presumptuous of me to even think of such a thing, and of course I know it would be terribly bad manners, and we're so far away from that particular moment, I couldn't even speculate about